Can you hear it? I can hear it. That clock is ticking and it tells me it's after 11. That means it's time for your favorite show and mine, Countdown to Armageddon. And I'm your host, Publius. And today I want to talk to you about minimum wage. Alright, let's begin with an understanding of what minimum wage is supposed to be for. Minimum wage is supposed to be for those low-end beginning jobs, generally, which used to be for just, high school students or people going to college, people just starting out. They have no skills, they have nothing that they can market, they have no experience. And this is what minimum wage originally was for. The problem we have is that minimum wage started being raised. And as it was raised, it's basically raised itself to where now people actually are expected to make a living on a minimum wage. Why? Because the companies, alright, I'll admit it, the companies are greedy. They figured out, well, this is all I have to pay to get away with it. So, they don't. That's all they pay. Now, here's the problem with raising minimum wage. If you employ 20 people, if the government sits there and says, we're going to raise the minimum wage, right now they're discussing raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. That's almost double what it is right now. This means those 20 employees will double in costs. Not in production, but just in costs. Now, in order to pay for this, most employers are going to have to make a choice. Do you hope that you can get a $20 increase, double the production out of them? Or do you cut employees? The reality is most employers are going to cut down their workforce. They're going to take of those 20 employees, and let's assume just to make everything stay the same, they're going to cut it down to half. So half your employment is gone. Now, the second thing that happens when you raise minimum wage is all the prices go up. Why? Because the employers that don't cut their workforce down in half, or who can't cut it anymore, well, money's got to come from somewhere. Remember, just because you're raising minimum wage doesn't mean you're raising production. Most of the time you're in places where you really can't get double the production out of the people. So, you raise your prices. And no, it may not be much individually. No. And most people are not going to think about that. But overall, all your prices go up. All across the country. So the buying power of the person making minimum wage stays the same. It doesn't increase. Now, here's where you have your glitch. You have two glitches. Number one, minimum wage, when they talk about raising minimum wage, they want to help the people that are the least well off. These people who are trying to make ends meet and really can't. So they figure, let's raise it up. The problem with it is, of course, since prices go up guaranteed after you raise minimum wage, and the buying power stays the same, you've done nothing to help them. Furthermore, what you've done to the economy is you've taken a good percentage of it and fired them. They've lost their jobs. So now you have increased unemployment. There's also another effect in this. The person who was making above minimum wage before, minimum wage may catch them up. At which point, you've made more workers into minimum wage workers. Now, let me explain this to you. If, for example, let's take a guy many years ago who started out went out, got trained, got a job as, say, a bus driver. He was making $10 an hour 20 years ago. As minimum wage went up, the amount he made above minimum wage did not necessarily go up also. So where he started out making twice minimum wage, or 3 times minimum wage, and in some cases even 4 times minimum wage, as minimum wage increased, his percentage above it decreased. At $7.50 an hour, he's barely making, at his $10 an hour, barely making above minimum wage now. Now you're going to sit back and go, but those companies, they should have raised his money. Again, you can't have it both ways. Either companies are so greedy they don't pay people what they're worth, or companies are open and honest and will pay people what they're worth. The reality is they don't have to. They're not going to. So you have now more and more people who have slowly become minimum wage workers. And this has gone on all the way since the very beginning. People that were making good, comfortable livings have had their living slowly eaten away by the costs associated with minimum wage increases. This is pretty sad, because that person who was, making $10 an hour 20 years ago, he was making good money. Now, he's barely getting by. All because some people have decided, well, we need to help the minimum wage people. You cut the number of people that are employed, and you've lowered the standard of living for everybody. Not lowered, but, well, you lowered the standard of living, but raised the costs for everybody. So who really benefits from minimum wage increases? Obviously not the people who got fired. Not the people that made more than minimum wage. The only person who really gets any benefit out of raising minimum wage is a group of politicians who get back to say, can get the right to sit back and say, see, we're trying to help you. We've raised the minimum wage. And meanwhile, they've helped you out of a job. Or, yes, they raised your minimum wage, but your costs went up also. Minimum wage is not the answer. The answer is the government needs to let minimum wage go back to being the starting job pay, not the standard job pay. We need to get rid of the idea that everybody should be making a wonderful living, no matter what their skills and qualifications are. That's how you motivate people. If you know that you're going to go out and get a job, and the first job you get isn't going to pay that great, but you're going to get some experience from it, okay, that's a start. The other thing you know is that in order to get a better job, you need skills, which means you need training. So this encourages people to go to technical school, business college, or even a university, so that they have more skills and more abilities to be marketed, and they get in a better paying job. On the same topic, making all of that free does not help. That actually dilutes the power of the bill, of your objective. Because you can't have 50 billion plumbers and expect plumbers all to make a good living still. Now, plumbers may be an exception, but you see what I'm saying. You can't. You're opening the door to an overage. You'll have a glut in that field. Now, the other thing you do is by bringing everybody to the same level, you're not bringing everybody up, you're bringing everybody down. Remember that guy that was making $10 an hour? Now he's minimum wage. If they get $15 an hour, he'll get $15 an hour too. You've now made a whole industry minimum wage employees. Did you raise people up to do this? No. You brought everybody down. And that's the last major problem with minimum wage laws, is they don't bring anyone up, but they do bring people down. Go back to that $10 an hour gentleman. At one point, he was doing very well. He made multiple times minimum wage. He was able to put money into the bank and was moving on. Now, though, he's just another minimum wage employee. You've taken away his buying power. He no longer has the excess income because more and more of his income is being eaten up by just getting by. Now, raise it to $15 an hour, and you've guaranteed that he is just like everyone else. This is another example of how socialism actually works in reality. You don't bring anybody up, you bring everybody down. You've taken people that were doing well and made them just like the rest of the people in the country, poorer and poorer. Now, this, of course, doesn't apply to CEOs, but as more and more of their businesses basically going into paying people not to do anything special, they start looking for ways to innovate. Remember, they've had to cut half their labor force. So what do? Well, most fast food restaurants just go to computers. You now have computers that'll sit there, and you go from once having a staff of 20 down to a staff of 5. Why? Because it's cheaper. That in a sense, actually allows the company to make a profit even after everything has gone up. See, instead of just firing the 10 people to break even, they fired the 10 people, broke even, but then their associated costs went up, so they fired a few more, and then they went ahead and did some advancements and some technological improvements so that they could go back into making a decent profit. And in many cases, most of these companies will continue to make a good profit, if not more profit, because they've been given the excuse to fire, the excuse to replace. It's a messed up situation, but the idea that communism or socialism is going to fix this, the only way that you can fix this is if the government were to arbitrarily come in, declare how much people make an hour, and fix all prices so that they cannot change. Now, you may be sitting back thinking, well, then why don't they? Why don't they? It's simple. Because if the United States fixes its prices, then a person can go to Mexico and get them cheaper. Or they go to another country and do a better job. And the same thing applies to the companies. I can make more money by going up here. I'm going to go up here. I cannot afford to run my business at the prices they say, so I leave. Or I close my business. How many businesses have closed or been absorbed into these superstores? That's something you might want to think about. That's another residual effect. As all these companies faced all these increased prices, including employees, a lot of them had to move on. It was cheaper to close. A lot of your small businesses, especially the mom and pop shops, they've closed. And they're continuing to close. You look at the shops, the number of small businesses in today versus, say, the number of small businesses in the 1950s. The number has decreased. I mean, some of the things that I used to love seeing on TV were these smaller stores and these smaller shops. and how these were such a great part of the community. Well, the community and their blind desire to help everybody has priced those businesses out of existence. You end up getting to where the only people that can afford to continue going forward are giant mega corporations. Walmart will always be able to afford to hire people. But that doesn't mean the store next to them will. Now that Walmart covers everything, more and more small grocers are out of business. Matter of fact, in some places it's almost impossible to find a small grocery store, a little local self-owned grocery store. Why? Because they were priced out of existence. So, as you're looking at and you're hearing these people talk about, oh, we're going to raise your minimum wage. We don't think it's right that a person should have to work 40 hours a week and still not be able to afford everything. They're right. It isn't right that somebody should work full time and not be able to make ends meet. But your method of trying to help them isn't going to work. So, as you sit there and listen to all of this, remember the facts do matter. And the only people that are really getting benefit out of this are the politicians who can say, well, at least we tried, as they got you fired. And this is Publius telling you once again, thank you all for joining me. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe button. Definitely subscribe. It's the easiest, most cost-effective way to support this channel. And remember, send me some comments. Tell me what you think. I'd love to hear from you all, either on the comments or you can email me. Email's in the description, along with other methods and other ways you could support this channel. Thank you all. You have a great day.